Hey friends and music makers, in this week's live stream we're continuing with the indie dance project from last week. We'll be focusing on developing the idea and beginning to arrange the track, exploring the melody, development of the melody, creating a second bass, adding some variations and a whole lot more. If you missed last week, no worries, I'll do a quick recap before we dive in. As always, feel free to join in by asking questions or sharing your own ideas in the chat. My goal is to help you level up your music production skills and unlock your creative potential. So without further ado, let's dive in and continue crafting some indie dance. Quick one as well, a shout out to Hawkeys for letting me know to continue this idea. So I do listen and read the comments, and thanks a lot for the feedback, by the way, on the indie dance stream. I'm glad that people enjoyed it, and as I said, big thanks to Hawkeys for reaching out, letting me know he'd like to see it continued, as somewhere in the video, I think towards the end I just mentioned, let me know if you'd like to see a part 2 of this, and in the end perhaps 3 and 4, and we'll finish this off as a finished track. Could be a good idea. I also had a poll running in the previous week to do with asking questions about what struggles people might have out there to do with music theory, listing a few different categories such as harmony, melodies, chords, basses, things like that, and I appreciate the feedback there, and I will definitely stay tuned, be doing a series of videos where they'll be a little bit more teachy, but we're going to go into music theory for electronic producers and take a look, a deep dive into harmonic rhythm, melodic rhythm, and all those good things about theory. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Thanks Hawkeys for letting me know. So what have we got? Quick little recap. We've got an indie dance idea going last week in the stream. It currently sounds like this. Bring volume down a touch. A little bit more. Cool. So yeah, that's a preview of what we got up to last week. So if you missed that stream, that is part 1. We came up with this 80s kind of drum kit. Big sort of feature of indie dance is the kind of nod to the synth wavy 80s kind of drums. This drum rack was built from samples from a drum machine from that time period, the sequential circuits drum tracks. We did swap out a few samples for some modern ones. The kick is no longer the kick drum that would have come with that drum kit, so I did do a little bit of swapping. Also the open hi-hat, I think we have one from another sample pack, but in general also the snares are layered a little bit with 2 snares from another vintage drum kit, the EMU, also from the same time period. So yeah, there's a little bit of swapping sounds, but in general we're looking for that kind of 80s drum kit vibe. And then the bass line, it's a nice plucky rhythmical bass, using an ARP to kind of chop up these long sustained notes to get that kind of rhythm that's happening at the moment. It's drift. I really enjoy drift. I think it sounds super nice, and we've got a simple open hi-hat pattern. Not too much happening there special. And then a rim track. This sounds quite different because it's a rim shot. It's all about the spectral resonator here and some processing. That gives it kind of the groove and the feeling. So we've got a beat repeat on there, shuffling things up a bit of reverb, a bit of panning, moving it around the head. And we've got a vocal chop, which again is using a bit of few techniques here. We've got an arpeggiator, which is kind of like giving us again the rhythm of the slices through the vocals. And then down here, switched off at the moment, but we've got this pad chord. And the MIDI looks like this. So we've got this kind of downwards chord progression, and the MIDI itself has been chopped up into eighth notes, so it's kind of rhythmic. So we've got a bit of a groove to that. Dr. Bones, a very good afternoon to you in the chat there. So welcome on board. Here we are in a part 2 stream of an indie dance project idea. And down below that pad chord, just recapping at the moment, the previous week, we've got a vocal to be confirmed, to be worked on a bit, but I sort of went through a couple of quick examples last week of what we might end up doing with that. But I've got this kind of speech, let's say, down here, which is an idea for a little vocal in the track.
It's possible that we're the only civilization in the Milky Way galaxy at the moment. Clearly, the universe means something.
And I've got some ideas about sort of processing that and turning it into a bit of a, robotic, futuristic kind of sounding voice. So quick little tip here. When I listen back to this track before today, just as I would do normally if I was doing a project, Ableton Live doesn't have a built-in notepad feature where we can kind of make notes and write it all down and have it pop up in the browser here. I do hope we see that one day in the future, where we've got a live kind of, as I said, window where we can write down notes of things to check and do in the future. And yeah, as I said, bring that up, pop it up, have a look at that and carry on working. There are some shortcuts. There's even a Max for Live notepad device that you can put on a track. I think I have it somewhere in my folder, but I didn't really find it that convenient, because it's kind of, you have to go into the track and then, or you can put it on the master track or somewhere in your project, and you can open up the notepad little, as I said, Max for Live device, and you can write notes in it, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. And so in the end, it didn't change a lot to have that device. So if you're familiar with that one, as I said, it's not that things don't exist, but they're not quite how I would like it to be. So what I do is something like I've done at the top here. I just create an empty MIDI track and essentially just go along and create empty MIDI clips. And I just use these clips to write myself notes in. So I just name them with whatever I want to remember, right? I also use a bit of a color scheme. So white is kind of, for me personally, if I open up a project and I see white, it's like a flag. It's saying, hey, check out that track or that part, and you need to do something there with that. So there's a couple little short workflow tips for you that I've found that helped me, and if they help you, I'd be super stoked to hear that. So up the top here, I wrote, on speaking about that, a bunch of clips with some notes that I was thinking to change. So I've got here the bass release to take a look at, writing a bass 2, that's going to come up in a second, maybe also a low bass, changing the pads. We'll go through that a little bit later, adding some leads and harmonies, the rim shot, resampling that, some extra drums, and then the vocals. So nice and simple. We don't have to have that turned on. It's got no instruments, nothing. It's just being used as a notepad to remind me about stuff. All right, so looking at that, let's maybe start straight away with just looking at this bass release. What is that all about? What is the release of the bass doing? So if we just listen to the bass line here that we've currently got, and we come into the drift, it's not a preset, it's a sound that I made from scratch. And we go to the envelope 1 up the top here, which is the amp envelope, so the volume envelope. And we play around with the release for a little bit. You'll kind of hear what this does. Let's maybe give it context, so the drums. So essentially, I'd quite like to maybe automate that a bit in the future, but what I do want is it to be quite short. It's definitely not going to be too long, because hopefully your ears can hear what my ears can hear, and that is if we push the release too long, it just gets muddy and everything sounds awful. And if we just sort of solo the kick in our drum kit, huge difference, right? So the shorter the release on the bass, the more we hear our kick, and the more we get around here, the more blurry and nasty it gets. So the first thing I want to do is shorten it up. I do have a sidechain here as well, which is helping, although currently it's not doing a lot, but that's because it doesn't have an input. So if we were to give it drums 80s, pull up this list here, and we want kick. It could be post mixer, pre-effects. Let's say pre-effects. Now we've got our sidechain back. That also helps, but a long release, as I said, is not really a good idea here, and I just wanted to show that to you. But a little bit of movement on it could be nice, and as you can hear, it kind of changes, makes the synth evolve a bit over time. So that's a target that, again, I could make a note up here. I already have, and that's what that's there for. And I will probably automate that a bit when I start arranging the track, and there'll be a little bit of movement in there, the same as I would probably automate the filter cutoff here as well. Nice, so that's what that's all about. Bass 2, well, we don't have a bass 2, so let's start working on that. So I have a little idea to have a small little turnaround kind of part at the very end of a phrase. This is 8 bars, so we could have it every 8 or every 4. Let's try every 4 to start with. So I'm just going to work kind of in this area here for a moment. So let's just loop that. Let's do Command Shift M. So give ourselves a new MIDI clip. And what I want to do is I want to put in some pretty small notes, I think. So I want to go try even smaller than a 16th. Let's try 30 seconds, and maybe we even go shorter than that. We're in the key, by the way, of D minor. It's what we started with last week. So let's kind of come into the end of the phrase over here, sort of somewhere. And let's have some Ds, some root notes. We might leave a bit of a space like that between them. Leaving a note sort of between. And this is the thing, I'm thinking actually I'll already go smaller again. Let's go right down to 64th notes. And then what I'll do is I'll bring those right in to each other like so. I'll try what this sounds like. And then what I'm going to do is duplicate that over to here, and I'm going to put that up an octave, something like that sort of idea. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like, and let's give it an instrument. And I am going to use, as much as I love making, you know, my sounds from scratch, the drift is from scratch, the pads are from scratch, I think I'll just use a bass preset to start with here, and then we'll maybe switch it out a little bit later. By the way, if you are here in the stream with me, do feel free to say hello. Drop a hello in the chat, let us know where you tuned in from, and if you've got any questions, fire them away. Okay, we need to get a little bit of space here. So we don't want that sound, we want just a nice bass. The 106 could do it. So let's filter this, so make our life a bit easier. These are just the basses that I've saved, the presets that I kind of like the sound of. That could be nice. Want sort of something a bit aggressive. It's got a lot of processing on it, but let's hear what this sounds like to start with. Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Let's also get all that other drums back in now. And then let's just have a look at this bass, because as I said, I can hear straight away, as I'm sure you can. It's got a lot of processing on it, so we can kind of go in and have a bit of a look at what's going on under the hood here of this preset called Bass Valley. We could also just mess around with the macros on the top here, which are already there to play around with. But if we open it up a bit, we can see it's an analog. We could see there's a velocity device in front of it. That's kind of handy because I actually didn't adjust the velocity of the notes yet. But let's say we actually do that a little bit. So let's just give these a little bit of randomization down here. Not too much, just a little bit, something around there. And then we've also got this velocity here, which I'm going to guess is possibly mapped, or there are things that are being affected by that. So that could well be the reason for that being there, but also it gives a little bit of velocity. I've got a filter in here. Okay, that's just tied to the macros, I would have thought. Interesting. Also doesn't seem to be mapped to that. So I'm guessing that filter is actually the analog. Let's have a look. So I'm just reverse engineering a little bit, right? So yeah, I can see the res and the filter are actually the synth itself. So I know what that's doing. This is actually interesting. It's not doing a lot. It's mainly actually the drive that they're using here to get a bit of character from the filter. So if we were to turn that off already. Yeah, as you can hear, it's mainly the processing of the filter here is more actually about this engine, the saturation drive that's coming from the PRD filter. It's not actually doing any filtering. So why am I doing this? Just because if I grab a preset, I kind of like to understand what it's bringing to the table, and is there anything I want to switch off and take over myself? Because the reverb and delay here, they are quite strong. They're both mapped. And we do have where here FX amount. Let's see what's mapped. So the delay, what is mapped? Simply the dry wet and the dry wet of the reverb and switching on and off. So what's that tied to over here? Is it the FX amount? Yes. You can see there, if I take that to 0, I take both of those out. So that will be interesting to hear what it sounds like now with those out, because I could add my own delay and reverb and make this a little more custom. So obviously it sounds a lot drier now because it is, but we know that this is bringing in their delay and reverb. So if we like, we can use the preset, but just have a little bit, or we could leave it switched off and add our own. So let's say we have a little bit for vibe. Going to bring my volume down a fair bit on this as well. Okay, maybe a little more until we get it where we like it. There we go, that's quite nice. Bit of erosion, so that's going to give us a little bit of crunch. That's quite nice. Fits the kind of track idea, and the rest of these are mainly to do with all to do with the synth. So I hope this helps, because sometimes it's good to kind of do a bit of reverse engineering, figure this out, because often if you use a preset, you're kind of trapped unless you look under the hood a bit. And sometimes I find people don't understand what artists and people I'm working with, they don't understand what's been applied here, and therefore they're sort of saying, well, I don't like that echo, or I don't like that delay. Well, we need to sort of get under the hood then and perhaps turn those things off and make our own version of it. So on the synth itself, we've got the cutoff and resonance map, that's fair enough. We've also got filter envelope, probably amount. Let's check that. So if we click the filter shell, yes, the envelope amount, that's over here. Glide as well, which is interesting, and we've got that mapped a little bit. So the synth itself is monophonic as well, which is fine. So all of that side of this device, and the sub volume, let's have a look at that. So which is giving us the sub volume? It's oscillates 2, and it's 100% at the moment. So that's interesting. So if we don't want any sub that's clashing with our other bass or something, then we're going to take that out to 0, right? So we're unpacking everything here. All right, let's crack on. Let's hear what it sounds like without the sub. Yeah, a bit cleaner. I'll probably leave that out. Maybe erosion a little bit less. Now glide could be interesting. So maybe a little bit of that. So now I can hear, I'd like a bit more delay. There we go. But I'm still not sold on the delay and the reverb. It's a little bit, because as I said, I'm kind of trapped, because whatever the settings are here, I kind of have to live with that a bit. So I'm thinking, again, I'm going to probably take those and make them manual, because I'm not really sold on the choice that's there. So I'm just going to switch that off for now, and I'm going to go and grab a echo or a delay. Let's have an echo, and I'll pop that behind here. Because I kind of want it a little bit shorter like that. And I've got a lot more control now, because essentially I'm deciding you know, what the left and right is, if it's triplets, how much is the feedback, how much is the dry wet, etc. And we could also similarly get ourselves a hybrid reverb and pop it behind here. And again, we're just sort of manually taking that over. It's just giving me more flexibility, which is something I kind of appreciate. And I can control those and automate this. I could go in and start changing things in here, but I kind of enjoy having the freedom to control that myself. Now let's do another little trick here with these notes. Let's try them down an octave. So what we could do there is have actually both. So let's say we have in our 2 4-bar phrases, up an octave and then down an octave. See what that sounds like. Also, I'm just going to play around with the timing of the notes for a second as well, and the length. Have to be honest, they all work quite well, but I like it kind of there, a little bit later than I had it. Now, that was interesting. Let's do a little bit of playing here. So my ears kind of caught something there. Yeah, so I was thinking to make that the end of the phrase, but I like this conversation that's just happened between those two parts. So that was what I heard, and I sort of stopped for a second to capture that moment where I felt like this one was talking to this one, and it would have sounded very vanilla and cliched if it was just another 4 bars and plonk this at the end. So now we've got... And we could even try that a little bit further forward, but I think it's right. But that would work as well. So maybe in another bar, I do that for variety, right? So I'm just thinking about little variations and thoughts. So maybe in a future bar, I come forward. All right, so I'm happy with that. Let's get solo out for a moment. Okay, so bass 2, we have action. So there we go with that. Again, you know, we could put more in here, more detail, but I kind of like it at the moment, as I said, a little bit open. We're going to have some other melodic parts, so I don't want to, you know, overcrowd things. That gives us a little bit of space for the two, everything to work together well. So yes, keeping things not, you know, it would be tempting to copy this out a lot more, fill up the space over here, and yeah, I think for the moment I'm not going to do that. So we now have a bass 2 up here. So let's say, just to keep on top of my notes a bit, I'm going to move that one over, kind of happy, tick the box there a little bit. So a low bass, what was I thinking there? By the way, if you're on the stream with me today, welcome aboard. If you're returning, great to have you back. If you're new here, well, welcome on board. Feel free to say hello if you're in the stream. We're doing Indie Dance. This is part 2. We started from scratch last week, and this is a continuation, adding some bits that weren't there, and then hopefully we'll get a bit of arranging happening as well. So let's try maybe a low bass as well. So we might even take it all the way to a third bass, but we may not as well, but we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to copy this bass down. That's the MIDI from the original bass line here, and it's kind of low enough, the notes that is. And what I want to do with this one is just maybe have something very clean and simple that would be like a club sort of bass line here that would really reinforce the lowest of lows. So let's maybe say we just start with an operator, one oscillator with a sine wave. And let's just have a listen to what that sounds like. Turn off the other bass for a second. So you're going to need headphones to hear that, or speakers. So that gives us a bit more feeling down there, but it's very static, and it doesn't have any harmonics because it's a pure sine wave. So what am I sort of banging on about there? Well, if we were to put an EQ8 behind this just to look at the frequency, we would see that we've just got the single note that's being played because it's a very clean sine wave. So we could dirty it up a little bit, or we could just have a triangle wave instead of a sine. And that's a little tip there for sub basses, because hopefully you can now hear versus what we just had. It just got a little bit more character. So if we were to use a triangle instead of the sine, then we actually can use subtractive synthesis, and that means we can even filter this tone, but we just have a bit more harmonics, whereas with the sine wave we have no harmonics, and therefore the filter does nothing. It just turns our note quieter, right? So I've sort of explained this before in synthesis in an earlier series of videos I did where I broke down learning synthesis, because here if we filter our sine wave, we're just turning our fundamental note that we're playing down with the filter. It's not doing anything productive at all. But if we change to a triangle waveform, we create some harmonics that we can then filter, and we've got a tone that we didn't have with the sine wave. Just a little bit. Just means this bass, you can hear it a little bit more than you could without that. So let's layer up that with the other bass and hear what they sound like together. Put a kick in as well. So I have a side chain already on the other bass. I'm definitely going to bring that across. So let's copy that from the original bass track onto the low bass. We're going to pop it here. We're just going to check. We don't need this EQ anymore. We're going to turn that off. We're just going to check its side chain to the drums and the kick, so it should be right, and we might play around a little bit with the envelope here of the kick start. So hopefully if we just listen to this on its own now, you can hear the little movement. And if we open up the filter, and if we move this around, the yellow in the background of the kickstart here, this is the kick drum. The white is our bass that we've got. As you can see, this is a great little device for getting that marriage together where they're giving each other a hug and they're sounding really nice together. And then if we don't want that much pump, because we're getting quite a lot of pump, let me just back this off a bit. But without it, that's what we've got, because those notes are long and sustained and they're swamping everything, right? So if you don't sort of use a sidechain in this case, it's making things a little bit tricky. Everything's on top of each other. We could also actually, as well as the sidechain, let's put the kick in with this bass. We could also bring the attack of the actual oscillator a little bit slower. And what that is doing here, if we were to draw a straight line where we just were here, the kick drum is the transient of the kick is hitting there. So this, the very start of my kick is hitting there. And so if I'm clever, I go to the bass and I just move that attack a little bit later. I'm making space for that punch in front of the kick just to fill in just here before this bass starts. And we could even go slower, a lot slower. Can you hear how the kick drum got stronger? So let's have a slow attack on our bass as well, on this low bass, plus the sidechain. And then we can have less of this pump, just for the movement and groove. So now it's following, it's feeling that groove of the kick. It's not pumping crazily, and it's helping the two of them glue together, right? So a few little tricks there for getting your low end to sit together really nicely. Let's bring in the other bass. Still a bit of housekeeping as well. I'm going to call this one the low bass. By the way, I actually didn't realize I didn't say anything at the very start, but hopefully everybody can hear everything working quite well, as yes, when we're in a live stream, sometimes you know, microphone and audio level. So if anyone's there in the stream and they wish to comment on that, that could be helpful, but hopefully you can hear everything quite well, and my voice and the levels of the music. I don't know if you're still there, Dr. Bones, but if you are, maybe you could let me know that, as you're the person that's popped up in the chat there today so far. All right, so now we've got two new basses, one which is going to be nice in the club and give us some sort of extra low end, and now we've got this nice little turnaround or little extra second bass that adds some sort of nice kind of groove. I'm just going to now work on my levels a little bit. If we take that low bass out, it's quite a lot of feeling, right? And it also means that all these extra bass parts, what's great about that as well is when we come onto the arrangement, we can now sort of make combinations, different combinations. They can all play on their own with other elements, or they could all play together. And so it gives me extra moves, like on a chessboard, of ways that I can kind of like, you know, build up this track and add the basses together and just start maybe with the low bass in the intro and then sort of move my way along. So I'll just do this so we can kind of see our overview, or we'll start the loop from here. Hop back over. So we could begin like this, just with this simple low bass. In the arrangement. And then maybe the little bass fills come next. And then this bass, the main bass, let's say, let's filter it right down, comes in. Nice. So there's a little tip sort of for sometimes flushing out sort of some more elements, bones. I guess that's a thumbs up, or yes, we are working, hopefully, fingers crossed. So yes, it's as I said, it gives us some arrangement tools as well, which is never a bad thing, I think. So let's carry on. What else have we got on the list? We can now say low bass. We've addressed a bit over here on my things to do list. Also bass release. I'm going to automate that in the future, so maybe I'll just make a note on that I'd like to still play with that, but more in the sense of automation. So I'm just going to keep it in my things to do, but it's definitely done for now. It would be more like a little bit of a track kind of change. Awful spelling there, by the way. Oh, nice. Hopefully there's no spelling police in the chat today. All right, so over here, pad change. That's what I've got kind of next. And I've also got this leads harmonies. So I think we can add a bit more music now. The pad change was, I'm not so sure that I'm kind of feeling the current pad. So let's have a listen to those. So I think I might use this, but I think I'll also create something a bit more simplified. So let's maybe do that next. Let's do that on the list. So I'm going to move these. Doesn't mean I'm going to delete them. Just when I listened back to the track, I thought, you know what, I'm not sure I needed that much from the sort of pad chord track. I kind of think it could be something like a more simple atmosphere. The synth might still be great, which is something I built from scratch last week. So let's just say that we just copy the MIDI back, a little bit of MIDI. But I don't think I want a chord progression here. We could start with a fresh clip, but let's say we just use this clip for now. And what we might do actually, I can see the bass notes down here. These are the bass notes here that are grayed out. That's the bass chord progression, goes like so. So let's say we're in the key of D. So let's maybe just have a bit of a drone where we have like a D note playing for a bar, and maybe we even stretch it. That's 4 bars actually. So maybe we just start with something like that with the same synth and see how we get on with that set, how that sounds. Yeah, that's more what I had in mind. And let's also say maybe try it up an octave. And once again, all the movement in it comes from a sidechain to the kick, and also all the movement in the synth itself, in the filters and in the LFOs within the synth. So just kind of thinking like, to begin with, a background atmosphere like this. So similarly to the bass, similarly to this loop, let's make that actually a proper loop. Let's consolidate that into a clip, same as we could do here. So let's say Command J, turn that into a clip, and we'll do the same for the next one here, so that those notes are kind of in place, and then we'll call that number 2 over here. So that's a variation of some sort that we could use in the future. Let's bring that over. Similarly, we have a bass pattern and a perk pattern over here that were different, that I tried out in part 1. And by the way, if you missed part 1, well, all of this, how we got to where we are here, it's all available in the previous stream in part 1. For sure, at the end of today, I will connect the playlist with the 2 parts in it. And so you can watch the first one followed by the second one if you like. So there is a reverb already on the track here, and I'm thinking to use that. And I'm thinking to kind of swamp this sound a bit, or try that. So a lot of reverb. Just going to go through a few of the different options in my hybrid. Yeah, Prism has a nice bit of movement. Shimmer's nice. Let's try Shimmer, and we'll change the pitch here. That could actually even sound cool, automating what I'm doing here. You can now sort of hear, it's almost like it's got a harmony here. Let's make that -5. So no reverb. Nice. So once again, kickstart's pretty important. Let's have a listen. Again, that's a sort of, again, bit of a pro tip, right? All those 3 layers of bass, that's a pro sort of way to get a bigger, fatter, more interesting bass. Side chaining here to get movement is important. It's a professional way to get some feeling going on here. If we don't have that, it's very static and very not so interesting. But that really helps move the track around, move it along a bit. Groove. So now it's more of an atmosphere. Take the reverb out. I'm also side chaining after the reverb, so I'm kind of including the reverb as more part of the sound, because if I put it the other side of the side chain, it's going to sound quite different. They both work, by the way. Maybe you can put in the chat which way around you prefer. I actually think I might prefer the reverb after the side chain. Yes, is my answer. Just make sure we're not got tons of low end here at the end of the reverb, as it's the last thing in the chain. Just going to roll it up a little bit. Reverb after, thanks Dr. Bones, that's what I felt as well. Hey, Blank Poster Music, long time no see, my friend. How you doing? You well? Yeah, the reverb after the kickstart, interesting, right? So what can we learn from that? If you're like me, always try those things out. Try moving things around, try position changing, and in the end, there's no rule that says the reverb has to be there. But here, it's, yeah, not really beautiful. It's not doing what I wanted, which was washed out and dreamy. So it's actually really good that I thought, let's try that. And I like that a lot because I'm trying to create this kind of cool atmosphere. I'm doing great, happy to watch your stream, happy to have you here. I did a few weeks ago, I can't remember which video it was, but I did comment about you and this is Blank Poster Music, the share that you did with that beautiful track, and asked me a little bit about how was that made. It was all about glides and bends, and if I think of which video it is, I'll drop it in the comment there in the chat. But I did actually try to do an example where I kind of looked at that, and it was all tied into, yeah, the comment that you left and the track that you shared regarding. So just think about that. It's pitch bend and glides that give you that sound that you were looking for in that particular track, in the synths, in the lead synths. So low end control is important on this pad chord. So we might even stick another EQ here, because you can see we are getting low end here. I don't really want any of that. getting in the way of my bass at all, because this is very washed out. So let's have a look, because one of these other tracks here has an auto pan. I think it's the rim. So it's panning left and right. So I quite like to try this with a bit of movement left and right as well. So let's have a see if we can get that. What have we got in here? We've got LFO2's not being used for anything. So let's do a little bit of a play here with trying in the synth itself, because we could have, maybe we'll do an auto pan actually, might be better. And what we'll do is we'll put in the rim so we can hear them together, and I'll try and get a different movement so that they're not doing exactly the same. So what is the rim doing in the auto pan? It's every bar is the rate here, and it's reasonably, not particularly fast. It's in a sine wave and it's note synced. Okay, so maybe what we do with the pad chord is we don't note sync it, which is good. We currently are not note synced, and we either go faster or slower. So if we go this way, that's nice, because now that is moving very slowly left and right, and the rim is going sort of in between it a bit faster. If we make this half a bar, they're working together, but also they're quite different. So I kind of remembered this was here, and I think it's good because then we get kind of conscious of making them a little bit different to each other, so not doing the same thing. And I really want that low now. And will my chords still work with it? This is a question. So where are we? We're in D3, okay, on our note, on our drone. Let's try another clip over. I'm going to try a bit of a shootout here. Let's have that down. Very welcome blank poster music. So let's have a change. It's a bit low. Okay, so maybe we'll try then one of our notes from the scale, and let's maybe the fifth, which is an A. So let's come up to the A. Try that again. Okay, it does work, but maybe I'm going to go to the B, which is the 6, sorry, in the scale, the interval of the 6th. Oh, that's nice. So maybe actually both, whether we go down from the D here to the B flat, I do like that. Gives me a little bit of goosebumps on the arms. But I'm tempted to make it all B flat now. So this is B flat. Let's put this one back up to the D. I'll let it play around again. Yeah, it's a bit high. So I think I'll just leave it all B. It's kind of the sort of dark edge that I'm looking for here. I didn't want it too pretty. Nice. I'm feeling that. I hope you guys and girls are feeling it as well. Hopefully these changes are making good sense and you're enjoying watching it happening in real time as we go about, yeah, making some adjustments. So I'm going to move pad change across. Might still use this chord progression. Let's hear what it sounds like if we were to, you know, jump across to that. Because I think, seeing as how we've got kind of like, we're in the arrangement view and we're working a bit differently to, you know, with this project, we can actually start arranging as we go over here. So what we might actually do is just put the chords kind of like in a bit of a break down, let's say, where we move across into like a break section of the track, because perhaps they will still work, but used in that way. Yeah, so with the reverb, it's a lot. So maybe what we can do is keep the progression, but not have as full of chords. If we take out the thirds, we'll take out a lot of emotion in here. See what it sounds like if we strip these down a bit. Nice. Probably just need to back off the reverb a little bit in here. So what we could do is automate the dry wet. Something like that, right? So we calm the reverb down when we go into these. Really nice. What else? Yeah, so I don't want too much of this at all, really. Maybe just make a little offbeat only. So a little custom drum pattern in here, just the offbeats, not too many of the little groove fills. So I'm just bringing back those offbeat notes and not the on-beat ones. Could perhaps have a little fill or two. Maybe just the one there is nice. Right, so that's cool because now we've got a new drum groove here for the break. So kind of using the arrangement view to its full effect. So this is our main groove here. And now we've got a nice groove here. We've carried over the little second bass. We've carried over the open 909 hats. I've knocked off the other two basses. We've got the vocal and we've got these chords working now. I think that's a cool scene change. We drag that out. All right, so let's get back over to our main loop. This is kind of like still the peak here. And let's say that the next thing we could add is some more sort of harmonies and leads perhaps. And tying into that, I kind of had this idea to maybe do something with this rim here because it's got a spectral resonator on it. And I'll show you, maybe we can do something kind of cool with that. So I think I'll leave the rim track as it is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it down so I don't mess up the rim. So I still want to leave that alone. But what I'm thinking to do is use maybe the notes and the resonator, that everything that's there, but try and create a new part from it. And it might have to be an audio, as I might do some resampling. I'll try and sort of walk you through what I'm thinking to do here. So that's the rim shot with the resonator. If I come over here to the frequency knob where you see the D2 pitch, and I start moving that, the decay is also interesting here. So I can make like almost like a really nice synth tone there, right? Just doing lots of decay, opening it right up. And then if I move the frequency, but moving between notes of the scale, I could make a pattern. I could automate this to change notes with the decay open and maybe record that. So let me, because it doesn't sound quite right with me moving this around, let's try and make it happen. So we're going to open the decay up like I've done, and we're going to grab that frequency. I'm going to go deep into the clip envelopes here, and we're going to grab this, which is the spectral resonator's note, and it's in percentage, so I'm just going to use my ears for the time being, and I'm going to change it over time here. And we could also make, what have we got here? We've got a full 4 bars, but this is only 1 bar down here, so if we stretch this out to 4, and let's say we get our notes across through that 4 bars as well. Let's hang on a sec. We don't want to kind of mess up what we have. Oh, we've duplicated, so we are okay. But yeah, essentially, let's make that loop a bit longer. Well, actually, no, we don't want to do that. We want what's here, because it's a bit different. I can see that. So let's go back just for a second to the notes. Let's get rid of that pattern there. And let's get this section here, and we'll just do a duplicate, and then again. All right, so now we've got our 4 bars of the same pattern. You can actually kind of chop it there as well if we like. Okay, so there's our 4 bars. Back to the envelopes. We've still got resonator note, we do. So what I'm going to do is create little pitch changes as we go along. So just put in a couple of points. Kind of interesting, right? So it's kind of taking this idea, and if we open up the resonator at the same time, right? So we can kind of do that these days over in this view. We can kind of have both. So we could have been working like this actually if I'd been a little bit cleverer, but sometimes we think of these things and sometimes we don't. So what I've got here is now I can kind of see how I'm moving that frequency knob, right? So if we look at what I've done in the percentage here, I was just using my ears to kind of try and create this movement across, but now we can kind of see what note we have here. Let's have a look at what we're moving through here. So actually it doesn't. Is that because, no, so it's a shame because it doesn't show me the actual note either that I've gone down. So when I was moving this before, you could see that, you know, I was picking out a G or an E or an A, but in this case, we don't see the actual whole macro move, which is a shame, but it is what it is. I'll just check in case I've done something wrong there. Frequency note, frequency hertz. No, can't really get that visible, but as I said, I've kind of used my hearing. So if you want it a bit choppier, I'm going to bring the decay down. Just play with the dry wet as well. So a bit of unison. Also we can try over here, filtering the low end or the high end. Cutting the low end. It's quite nice. So let's put it in with a few other bits of our music and hear what it kind of sounds like in context, so that make sure it's going to work with everything else, because I don't want to lose the original rim. And that's its main competition, is the original part. Yeah, so maybe up there is nice. So I've changed the root note now, so I've still got the same sequence, if you're following along okay. So I'm just going to sweep a bit of low end out. That saves me needing an EQ. I can do it directly in here. Also shifting down here could be interesting. Let's get some of our other musical layers in, hear what it sounds like. Okay, maybe a bit of saturator behind this, just to thicken it up just a wee bit. But I think it's a really interesting layer, and it's come about sort of in a unique way. So rather than putting in a synth and programming in a sequence, I'm kind of using something that was already in the track, which was this rim with the resonator on it, which the original sound is up here. This fella here, which is a nice rim shot. Really nice with some processing, but the resonator's giving it kind of like a little plucky kind of sequence. And now we're kind of taking it to a different place by modulating with the envelopes the frequency knob here of the resonator, making a sequence with this and using the decay and the other parts of the resonator to get this really nice kind of cool interesting sequence in a way that, yeah, may not be the traditional way, but there we get a different sound because of that. And we can play around a lot with the root note, as you can see here. So that's a bit low. We don't want muds. I think I like it right up here. Okay, so with that one, what we're going to do with it as well is we're going to print it. We're going to take that sequence that we've created here now, and let's try printing it to audio and capturing it that way, and then perhaps working with it in audio instead of like it is, because it's a little bit confusing. What we might do is a bit of housekeeping here, and we'll just call this, what should we call it, the spectral sequence. All right, and let's give it a whole new color. It's got a new lease of life. And let's grab this empty audio track below, and let's go in, and we're going to come in from the spectral sequence, arm the track, set it to in. We don't need to monitor the input. We'll be able to hear that fine. Let's give ourselves a little bit loop length. Let's put it to 0 dB so it records kind of loud, and we're going to start over here, hit record. Actually, for now I'm going to loop it again, because we'll get this re-triggering. Nice. So trim off the fat that we don't need that, we don't need that. We've now got ourselves a nice little audio loop of that sequence, so we're going to work with it as an audio track for something different. And then let's copy that name, pop it down here. Fun way to make your own loop, right? And it doesn't really sound quite the same as I said, if we were just sort of plugging in some notes with the pencil and making a sequence and dropping a synth on there. We've just got a sort of something that's a little bit now characterful and unique to this track. So with this track, I'm going to bring it right down the bottom. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to switch it off, but I'll keep it hanging around just in case we need to redo something. And let's turn off everything that's in there, so it's not going to be draining our CPU at all. So that's down there, and close that track up. And then with the audio version now, I'm just going to bring the volume up a little bit, like so. Make sure that none of the sort of peaks are kind of clipping or anything. Don't need it that loud, just need to crank it up a little bit. Something like that. And let's play a bit further with it. And I'm going to make a copy of it over here. Let's loop it. And let's try it in double time. So let's play around a little bit with it over in here, in audio now. So we're going to half time it, make it faster, see what that sounds like. I see something that's happened there a little bit, so let's fix that first. So we'll undo that, we'll come back a second, and we'll just have a look in here, because we're not quite, make sure we're looped up in a good space. We could actually start from here, but it's okay. This actually looks fine. It just was looking a bit odd a moment ago. So let's loop that up down in here, make sure that we're sort of getting our first bit of the sequence in here in the right space, which now looks good. So we're starting from the right point. So let's just listen to that, make sure. So now let's try again to half-time this. We could also crop this, by the way. It might be a good idea in here if we're just working with this area only. So we're just going to highlight the loop like we have, crop the clip, re-loop it, and now we're just working just with that section. And I'm going to half-time it again. Also change the beats preserve maybe from transients to sixteenths. You can pitch it down. Yeah, quite like it a little bit like that. So what I've done is I've taken the original sequence, half-timed it, pitched it down here, changed the preserve to 16th, so it's got that nice little bit of kind of wobble to it now, reducing that envelope down a bit. So all of these 16ths in the back here, we're kind of, you know, getting a little bit of slicing over that. Dr. Bones fits nicely with the bass art pattern timing. Yeah, it's kind of got a nice groove and feel around it. I agree with you. Thanks for your comments. So yeah, I think this is that half-time move was cool. Pitching it down gives us a bit of a change there. And what we could do with the other loop here, perhaps we could leave the pitch the same. Perhaps we could do the 16ths and a little bit down here. But this could now be, again, we're building in the bank here. Love when that happens. Variations. So this here, maybe we'll leave it in the original timing, and that might be a change. So again, it's over here a bit in the break scene. What does it sound like? What does it also sound like if we switch into it? Maybe pitch it down the same as the other. Try this twice. Okay, we could also try something like this. So maybe not as much of the seconds. So this is not half time, it's the original time, but I agree with Dr. Bones. The timing of that half time has done a really nice job. Makes it feel very much like the 80s sort of sequence that we're kind of looking for. Let's try this. Maybe even less. Just something like that, little random. Yeah, not that loop, don't like that clip. This one works. Probably can find another one though, I would say, so I'm just chopping these out of this sequence here, right? Let's try this one. Not quite. Yeah, I think just something as subtle as that, just for a little bit of a switch up. Just changes the groove, makes it a little bit different. So let's give these another color so we remind ourselves they're not the same. Let's get an EQ on this, take out if there is any low ends. There wasn't really, but just as a safe guard. And let's have a bit of filter on here as well. So we can automate this through the track. Just having a look in the chat here. Blank Post the Music, I've been trying to produce since 2009. However, due to a lot of personal issues in my life, I was never able to focus or concentrate. And when I tried to learn music production, I watched YouTube and took tuition. However, in 2025 now, I feel like not giving a production a go, or maybe try it for fun. Well, hopefully you feel like giving it a go, not giving it a go. I hope you feel inspired. So yeah, it should always be fun. It should never be something that doesn't feel fun. Otherwise, I think, yeah, music production, we were doing something wrong. It should be fun and enjoyable. Of course, there's pain points along the way when you're trying to learn and make music. And I think one of the biggest things, right, is that when we start wanting to create our own music, we might already have the taste, that is good taste, to know, hey, that sounds great and we want to make that. But of course, as we start learning and building up our skills, our music doesn't sound like that yet. And sometimes that journey to getting it to sound like our taste, what we like, takes quite a while. There's actually a man called Ira Glass. I'll put it in the chat. His name is Ira Glass, and he's a journalist, and he speaks about that. And I absolutely agree with him. When in regards to your taste and your progress to actually making something that you enjoy yourself, as I said, matching your good taste in music with the product that you create yourself, and that takes time. But as I said, the journey should be fun. If it's challenging, frustrating, struggling, good to get some help. Small plug there. I mean, I'm a music production coach, so I'd be very happy to talk with you about that if you wish to talk about it. But hopefully, as I said, watching these sessions or other people producing, that it should inspire you, hopefully, to want to do it, certainly not to throw in the towel and not do it. All right. Also got to bring the dry wet down actually a bit on this track as well. Very welcome, Blank Poster Music. I'm just bringing the dry wet a little bit down here as well. Okay, so in this section here, because we're sort of arranging, and let's say we put a couple of markers up here. We've got one here. Let's call this the peak. Peak, or if you like, it's going to be, it's sort of including the build, but let's say I would like to call that the peak. And this right now is going to be, it's currently like a break scene, something where we break down into. So we've got kind of two little kind of 8-bar phrases here that we can kind of mess about with. And so I've been taking some things out and changing some of the patterns here, right? So we've got a little bit of different variations going on. Let's drag that over there. Because what I think in here is, originally I had some tom drums. They're up here, this pattern here. And I think I'd like to have some sort of, like I did write myself somewhere in my to-do list here, some toms and snares. So I think we could make a nice little fill. So let's drag that along. The rim resample, I've done that now. I hope you enjoyed that one, by the way. As I said, I know it was quite perhaps technical and very sound designy to get this loop, but I think it was a lot of fun and hopefully rewarding in the result, right? What it sounds like, what's kind of happened because of that work is a little bit unique, bit different. Doesn't sort of happen somewhere else, right? It's kind of what we're sometimes trying to do with these experiments. They don't always work. So what I'm thinking to do, let's get the original drum rack here, and let's get tom 1, and let's get it out of the rack. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. We can just actually just drag it and drop it somewhere where there's a bit of space. That's still in the rack. We want it out of the rack, so we can come all the way over to the right, let Ableton do the work. Keep going till we get some space over here, and we can then drop it. Okay, so that is tom 1 over there. So let's do a housekeeping and name that. Okay, great. And then we're going to do the same. The other way you can do it is just click on the tom, right click and extract the chain. That will do the same thing, and it automatically puts it all the way over there, so you don't have to drag it over there. If you've got a lot of things in your project, it's probably a better idea to do what I just did, extract it, because it makes your life a little bit easier instead of having to drag for 5 minutes till you get to the free space on the other side. So now we've got our two toms out of the rack. They have been silent in the rack anyway because they were clashing with the bass. So originally at some point in the stream 1, I kind of took them out because, yeah, they were clashing. So now down here, tom 1 and tom 2, let's bring that up. And let's say, oh, well, that's okay. I think my webcam, let me know if it's in the way. So here was the pattern. We don't need the MIDI that much. We've got it over here. And now we've got the two toms in a drum rack. Now, again, we don't have to have them in a drum rack. You can right click on here and ungroup it. So it's just a tom, and the same here. It kind of seems to be a bit of a waste of a whole drum group. If you want to add other sounds and layer it, absolutely, by all means. But yeah, I think we can ungroup it. Actually, in thinking about that, yeah, I'm going to ungroup it, because if I use another snare, I'll just add another individual track. That's the way I'm going to handle this particular fill, so we can kind of see what happens. So now we've got tom 1 and 2. Now here's another trick. If you do extract, drag, move out of the drum rack to its own individual track, make sure you do this, because the sample is down on A1, because that was the pad in the drum rack where that sample was originally nested, right there. So watch out for that, because it's now actually pitched to that note because of the workflow I've chosen. If I left it in the drum rack, it wouldn't be what's happening now. So if we go one step back, Let's do that just with one of them. So here, the MIDI on that one is on A1 on the pad, but it's going to play back a C3. How do I know that? We can kind of dig in a bit in here and check, and you can see here, even though it's on that pad in the drum rack, it's only playing the C3 back. So there's no pitch change. Doesn't matter what the pad is here. The pad is here because it's actually A sharp one for this tom. It's going to play back C3. So hope that makes sense, because it's something that if you ungroup it, you need to sort of get in the routine of putting it. If you just put it back to a simpler like I've done now, then you want to go through and make sure that you actually just manually move these notes to the C3, and then we're with the same workflow. We've got the notes in the middle of the piano roll. We're not really changing. It's the tom is the original pitch of the tom drum, so we've not altered that by the MIDI. So hopefully that made sense. If you've got any questions about that, fire it in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer it. Okay, so if you want to leave them at that pad pitch, you can as well, which is obviously another option. But yeah, keep in mind that it's going to be a bit of a strange pitch, potentially. Might be amazing, might sound absolutely incredible. So I kind of like the look of this fill here as a starting point. So let's maybe knock off a bunch of the rest of the MIDI and just have that for a second, just to listen to. Okay, and it's also important that they are different toms, so these are not the same. They are two different tunings of toms, so they are different tones, and they're coming from that original drum kit that I'm using here. So let's open up another track, and we could work in audio or MIDI. Doesn't really matter too much, but let's maybe go for MIDI again so we can kind of create a little conversation here. And let's drag a copy of a MIDI note down to this empty MIDI track. We'll turn it into a different color, like so. And on this one, I'd quite like to have another 80s kind of snare. And I think I've got a good one somewhere in synthwave drums, but in another of, it's either EMU or LM1. Let's maybe just filter by samples. Dr. Bones, heading to work. We'll check out how you finish later. Have fun. Hey, Dr. Bones, been great to have you on board, and all the best for your work today. And thank you. Yeah, check it out later. We've got about 30 minutes to go, and I'll definitely have fun for sure. No doubt about that. LM1. Okay, so I'm going to filter LM1, and I'm looking for this time a snare. Yeah, both of those really nice. So let's have one of those. Nice 80s snare drum into a simpler down here. And that's going to be part of this conversation. Maybe we do something like that. Let's put these three snares then together in our own little MIDI clip. So we're just going to highlight that and Command J to stick them nicely into their own little MIDI clip. Let's loop that clip. And then with those three snares, let's get the velocity of them a bit different. And in fact, let's undo that and let's do a ramp. Love these tools, by the way. This is Ableton 12, and you know, these tools, things like this ramp here, we used to spend a lot of time manually doing this, and now we can just kind of instantly kind of get that happening. We can also change maybe the length of them all. Let me just zoom out a bit. So let's maybe do short long or long short. Maybe short long. Well, that would change the rhythm. That might be interesting as well. I was more sort of thinking that, then that, something like that. Do we hear this other tom? Yes, we do. And let's maybe try out some other toms as well, just while we're in here. So we're going to go down to tom 1, open up our browser again, and let's click the hot swap on that sample, which should find it somewhere here. And then let's click sound similarity, see what we get on this list here. Let's maybe try this one. Let's go back a few steps, back to there. All right, let's maybe leave it as it is. Let's maybe play around, make sure we've got a bit of velocity in these notes as well that are different from each other. They are, that's great. Let's have a bit of groove maybe as well. Okay, clear my search bit. So now I'm just going to balance the volume of these. So a bit of reverb on this one as well. We'll just use Ableton send return for a moment. And let's on this tom, see if we can give it a bit of a character inside of the simpler. We'll just use the filter and we'll use one of the circuits. I do like the Oscar one, so that kind of gives it a bit more drive. We could do that externally as well, but we can always use the let's also EQ it a little bit. Now the other one. Let's have that one a bit louder. So we're getting this conversation going, right? Same thing, going to give that a little bit of crunch. Take out any unnecessarily low end. Might even just try, let's try a little bit of redux here. Maybe that's a bit too much, so just looking for maybe just a little bit more character to this sound. It's very kind of clean. Yeah, maybe just a tiny bit of erosion. All right. So back over into the arrangement view. Now we've got this little repeatable fill that we can use in our break scene, and we might even use it outside of the break scene. So I'm going to get rid of all that MIDI that I'm not using. Don't really need that anymore. And take all that stuff away. And so this, we could try one of those as well, maybe at the turnaround there of end of 4 bars, but I think it's probably more end of 8 bars. Doesn't have to be happening so often. And then let's see how often in here we might use it. Okay, so quite like it to happen again there, maybe. One too late. Just drag that over to there. Also, we'll silence that one for now. Just gonna do a bit of housekeeping here. Let's also group these. Drum fill. And let's maybe have on the fill itself a little bit of delay. Just very small amount. Let's unsync it. Maybe we copy that pattern across. And we can automate that delay a bit to be opening up actually. So let's just experiment that for a second. So if we put the delay and we put the dry wet in action and we just try a little bit of that just as an experiment. Sort of coming up in that break a bit. Might actually do it a bit different to that sort of style, what we might do. So we'll clear that envelope, turn on the pencil tool. We might do sort of little increments this way so it cuts off, maybe even a little bit wider like that. Just experimenting. So I kind of didn't want it to swamp everything. I kind of want it to die away again. So something a bit like that. Right, so just kind of controlling it a little bit different. I'll definitely go in there and make that a little bit more polished, but again, just sort of playing a little bit here so we can kind of, you know, if we turn the pencil off here, we can come in and just kind of, you know, get that all, what have we got over here, 42, so we can just kind of nudge all this around a bit until we get it nice. Maybe we'll go up to that break point there. Alex Moreno, hello everyone, better late than never. Good to have you on board, Alex. I hope you're well and everything's good. 52, that's already nice and lined up. And down the bottom here, what have we got? Kind of 15, 15, 15, 15, a little break point we don't need there. So we can get rid of that. 16, my OCD's kicking in. Yeah, something like that. So that would be an idea just for a little drum fills. Okay, let's bring in our peak loop. This is the break we've sort of been working on a little bit. Just going to bring this a little bit further down. It's the reverb on the pad. Might also try changing the pitch back as well. Right, progress. Okay, so down here we've got a chop. We've got this vocal and I've got a couple of ideas of things to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this chop from the original vocal across into the break. I'm going to mute it there. So we're probably not going to use it in the peak for the moment. It might come in the break. And this little white clip I've got here is a very thin slice. So essentially what I've done, if we zoom right into this Galaxy Vox, this little Vox sample that I have, I'll solo it and I'll loop this.
Stars.
And essentially what I've done is I've just made the smallest loop I can. I can't go any smaller than a beat, right? And now I can kind of jump that around using the arrow keys. If you keep the loop brace at the top here, a solid color, you can use the left and right arrow keys and the up and down to jump it around. And I've gone through this whole sample. You can also drag it around if you like, and I've just been listening out for little rhythmic.
It's possible that we're the
so
only
that also the possible is quite good.
It's possible.
Little sections like that, because what I sort of want to do is, if we make another audio track, is grab this little chop, bring it down from the original there, and then work with it. So this white one here, as I said, is another example. And then what I sort of want to do, so let's try one with the P possible. I'll just move the white clip along a bit. And let's say we're playing it.
That we're
Let me make sure I'm on the right clip. So I'll start that again. Something like that. So I'm making just a little stutter sort of vocal. I'm going to drag this over to the start of the bar because I'm going to want a little bit longer. I'm going to make, say, 1 bar of this, let's say, for now. So I might as well just copy something like that. Perhaps the last one will stretch the sample back out like so. That could be interesting. Now we could process it quite a bit before we do anything else, but we're just kind of chopping out a little piece of the vocal. Then we're going to stitch that together now, Command J, and turn it into a clip. And now I'm going to flip it, reverse it around, and try a volume fade on it. And the idea is we're taking sort of something out of that clip and turning it into our own little effects that we're going to use, just like that sort of drum fill, but we're going to use these little vocal stutter fills as transitional kind of effects. So let's also do one with the other little clip that I've got. So
stars.
This one definitely is a better choice, I think, for the fact it just does that. So let's try that, and we'll do a copy of that. So we're going to do two of those, one a little bit different to the other. So this one, I'm going to continue the theme of just that all the way and see which one sounds a bit better. This one, I stretched it back out at the end. So we'll consolidate that. And we'll consolidate this one. So yeah, just trying to show you a little way that you can make your own kind of little effects in your track that are built from things we're going to use. So that vocal we're going to use, by the way, we haven't sort of put it into its full effect yet. Reverse this, and same thing, we can use a little fade if we like. It's in audio. Much better than this, more successful than the other one, but I just showed you that, I guess, as a way of starting with a bit of new material, which is what I did. Just a very small loop, went all the way through the whole sample that I'm using here, looking for little rhythmical loops or little sounds that I could then turn into something like this. So let's do the other one the same. We don't have to reverse them, by the way. This is for a reverse, so let's say we don't reverse this one, and we have it the other way. So think of them like a bit like down and up rises, right? So this case it's stuttering up, stuttering down. And because they're in audio, you can also get into the clip once you've made it, and we can do all sorts of stuff. We can actually turn on the beat transients, we can repitch it. All right, so you can do all sorts of fun stuff in here as well and turn it into a really modified loop, and you can keep sort of going on with this, by the way. You can keep resampling. We could consolidate that, start again. So maybe I'll do a video one day where we'll make lots of FX and we'll go deep on that. But this is already sounding, you know, a bit more interesting than it was a second ago. So let's say we undo that for a second, copy that across. Let's make this one the original, so we know that that's not changed. And then with this one, let's make it something a bit different. So we're going to go back to 16ths on the transients. So we're using the grid in the background in 16ths to give a little bit of a choppy feel, like so. And then what we might do with the pitch is actually make a little ramp. So we click on it, go into the envelopes, choose the modulation lane here, which is currently 0 semitones, and we could go up and down or just up. That's kind of quite musical, right? Sounds really quite rhythmical. Maybe it's quite nice like that. So just with that, we've got a 2, and we could carry on with that, making all sorts of nice little extra FX-y parts. So those 2 there, I'm going to move those up, zoom out a little bit. So these are going to be, you know, 2 Vox FX, let's say. This one also, for the moment, what have I got in the original? Just beats and transients. Also, you could do this without, don't have to be in beats. So if we look at this one, the reverse one, an interesting one to try here would be texture. What we really need to do though is change the change a bit the timing if we're going to do that, but something like this. So it's quite interesting as well, right? Completely different. So again, what I should have done though is I'm going to undo all that, unfortunately, go back and make a copy of that because I like that, but I want to have preserved version of that. So original, let's call that reversed, and now we'll do similarly to here. On the second one, we'll go back and we'll go texture, grains and size, which as I said, you can get really kind of fun stuff happening there. We'll loop it, so we're in here, and then we'll stretch it quite far away from where it was. So let's go over to this clip. And we'll call this stretch. Yeah, lots of fun. Okay, so let's do a little housekeeping. Over here, we've now got Vox FX. And we've got Vox FX. Hang on a second. Try that again. Vox FX. Let's do reverse. And then we'll duplicate that track down and we'll have the forwards. So we'll take those away from there. And these ones here go away. The other way around. Okay, fair enough. Like so. And we'll take those ones away there. Nice. So it's just giving ourselves some options for some effect transitional type pieces. Now we can try some of these out, and where we'd use these again in little transitions. Also probably add reverb and delay to these so that they work quite nicely into spaces. So maybe here we have one of these coming tailing in and out. Let's loop this up. Make sure we haven't got anything else turned on that we don't want. Unsolo.
Civilization in the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah, this is off and off. Yeah, so I don't want too many of those. So let's just mute this one. And let's already do what I was speaking about. Let's have a few less things playing so we can kind of hear. So we're going to get an EQ on it, clean it up a little bit. Let's turn it up a bit. And let's have this EQ, sorry, the echo, perhaps just turn on. So we'll bring up the automation and we'll say you're going to switch on and off, and maybe just at the end here something in the last little one or two, perhaps even just the last one of the stutter. Now. So something like that. And we'll need to just boost it a little bit. We can actually do it in here as well, because we lose a little bit on the output. Better. So I can fine tune that, but that's the idea. I quite like how that sounded. This one, let's get it volumed up a bit here. Somewhere around there. Let's try that again. And if we like, we could also, let's create another one of these. So we've got a copy of it again. Bring that over. Take it outside of the loop. Let's call that number 3. And with this, little trick you can do as well with these, when you make something like this, if you hold down Shift and then you get the little bracket on the right edge of the clip, but you must be holding Shift on your keyboard, keep it held, we can then actually just stretch these out and we could create as far as that will stretch right across. So let's see what that sounds like. Nice. I even like how it played with the original down here. Actually, that works really well. So the 2 conversation and then finally the original one coming in here, that was a happy accident. That was not planned. It was kind of an interplay conversation that's just happened because that was down there and this was on the other track. So I didn't realize that. Yeah, so that with a bit of delay on it, this one, it's going to work nicely. So let's try this also with the stretch on it. So we're going to copy that down there because that belongs in that direction. This one's going to come up. That's going to go because we've already got that. This one here. So we've got a copy of it, I believe, but if not, we'll bring that. No, we don't actually, because that's the stretch. Hang on a second, Heath. There's the original there. So they are different. So we want to be a little bit careful. We've got an original and a stretch. This one, what is it? Something else, right? Pre-processed. So we'll leave that over there. Not using that one. Okay, so now I've got the original and stretch, a copy of each. That's good. So I'm going to try same thing, but this way. See what that sounds like. Yeah, it's too much. That's okay. Kind of suspected that might be the case, but wanted to try it. Okay, so let's put the echo back just so I can see that. Device on. Let's lock the automation, and then I'm going to move this stretch out. And I'm going to try the original there and not the stretched one. And maybe I'll go with that. Let's turn up the volume a bit. Right, so I'm going to mark this one. It's a work in progress, that one. That is not the finished article. So I'm going to mark that as white. I've got this little workflow that when you see white, it means a reminder for me that I've not settled on that. That's something I'm going to redo. The pad chord we've changed, so I'm happy to give that its own color now. It's no longer white. The vocal itself, there's work to be done here. So this is white because this is going to be part of the track. I'll give you a little preview before we wrap up today's stream. So that's a white. Hang on, all colors. What's going on there? Come on. Ah, wait. Okay, first white. Secondly, track colors, great. So that's going to be part of the track. This, we might take some more chops out of that, so we'll see. All of this stuff from there down are leftovers from the previous part 1 stream. Not using any of those, so I'm just going to put a divider track in there. They could potentially, well, in fact, they can all be removed. Those, if we need them, we can go back and visit project 1. This was new today, so we'll leave that in the bottom down here in case we want to revisit it. But that's all that is down there. And then right up here on my to-do list for today, toms and snare fill, that's also been done now. So that can come off the to-do list. Extra hi-hat, no, haven't added an extra hi-hat today. Stutter vox, starting to work on that. So definitely added one, but it's perhaps we can continue working there. The spoken word, that is definitely not in the action completely yet. Bad spelling is what that is as well. A bit of a bad spelling day today. So delay there, spoken word delay, that's a work in progress. All of the stuff over here, bass 2 added today, low bass added today, pad change today, resample today. So let's have a look at what we've got then, recapping what we've done today. Also the bass release automation, that's for later in the track. We're definitely going to do that. So that's just a reminder to do that. We could maybe have still another lead or harmony yet musically. Extra hi-hat is to check, work on the starter vox, work on the spoken word. And that's, as I said, a note for the future. Also these extra clips here, I don't need that extra bass. That's in stream part 1. Haven't used it, don't think I will. Percussion track 2. Perhaps the variation of the rim shot, that might stay. Also the sequence, we've got 2, so that can stay. And these other extras over here, they're similarly copies, backups for the little parts, so they can live over there as well. So today we added, let's go down here a bit, we'll bring that drum fill all the way down there. We've added a low bass, that sounds like. And that gives us a nice club low-end bass line to go with our main bass. And it's just a simple operator with a slow envelope. We do want the kickstart on actually. So it's got a little bit of sidechain. Doesn't happen there, sorry, I'll keep the peak loop for going for a moment. And then we added this second bass here, bass 2. Which is this preset, but I've kind of modified it a little bit so that I have control over the effects that are used with it. Open hi-hat is from previous stream. I've added a drum fill, we'll look at that in a moment, that's in the break section. The rim is from part 1, as is the open hi-hat. We'll play it all together in a moment. This sequence is brand new. And that's come about from actually using the rim shot above and the spectral resonator and turning it into a whole new kind of track and sequence, which was kind of fun making it. The vocal FX is from the original part 1. Pad chords had a serious change. It's now much more of a drone in this clip. And we've messed around quite a bit with the reverb and some settings in there to get it so that it's kind of more in the background, more of an atmosphere. And now I've just been adding these little vocal FX parts. All together in our main peak. And then we sort of ended up with a break section. Good thing when you're working the arrangement, we can jump straight over and start a whole new, it's a good way to get out of a loop, because we've kind of been working in a loop here, building our peak, but we can jump straight across to the right and start carrying some things across, deleting some things and removing. So we ended up with a new drum loop at the top where we've removed stuff and made a new pattern or two. Bass line carries over from the main break, but now we've also got these drum fills, snare and a tom conversation. We've got a different pattern on the sequencer, and the pad chord plays a rhythmical chords, and now we've got this nice reversed, stretched, reversed vocal, and that's eventually going to have a conversation with either a stutter or this one, which we haven't been playing with today.
To me, a lifeless world, a lifeless galaxy is a meaningless galaxy.
I can assure you, this is not going to sound clean like that. That is the vocal that I plan to use, this chop.
To me, a lifeless world, a lifeless galaxy
it's going to sound,
is a meaningless galaxy.
Let's give maybe a quick preview.
To me, a lifeless world, a lifeless galaxy is a meaningless galaxy. To me, a lifeless world, a lifeless galaxy is a meaningless galaxy.
Yeah, something along those lines. So I'm going to use grain delay, and we're going to get some LFOs in here, and we're going to have some fun, and we're going to twist that vocal up so that it's, yeah, not kind of vanilla and just plonk there like it is at the moment in its sample form. So on that note, if you've been with me in the stream, well, obviously it's been great to have you on board. Shout outs to, I'm just going to check back up to my notes. It was Hawkeys who asked me to, carry on with the part 1 and turn it into a part 2, which I've done. Thank you for letting me know that, because I often ask in the streams, do you want to see a part 2? I'm listening, I'm asking questions, and hopefully giving you content that's helping you skill up as a producer and learn things and get some value from watching these streams. Dr. Bones, was great to have you along the way there. Blank Poster Music is always a pleasure. And Alex Moreno towards the end there, jumping in, better late than never. I'm sure you'll catch up on the rest in the replay. But as always, pleasure to have you all this week. Looks like we're going to keep going with this one. Probably, I think we should turn it into a finished track. Again, if you've got any thoughts about that, you're watching it back on replay, or even now, drop a comment, let me know. Small favor to ask, if you did enjoy this stream, and you do enjoy the streams on the channel, consider giving it a thumbs up, considering dropping a comment, sharing it with your friends, subscribing to the channel. It helps a lot, and helps us share the knowledge and the music and Ableton Live with others. And yep, that's my kind of mission here on the channel. So on that note, I wish you an awesome rest of your Sunday and end of the weekend and coming week. And I will see you again on the following Sunday for the next edition and live stream. And coming up in the future, as I said, there will be a series of music theory videos, so stay tuned for that. I put the questions out, put the feelers out, you told me what you wanted to see, so we're going to be diving into theory a bit, harmony, melodies, basses, rhythms, and unpacking tips, tricks, knowledge about all that stuff. I will also add a video here when I can that I would suggest, if you enjoyed watching this one, that you watch that one next. And as I said, take care of yourselves. Alex Moreno, also to you, have a great day, week, see you in the next one. Peace out, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Keep on creating, and see you in the next video. Ciao for now, everybody. Bye-bye. Ciao.